History is filled with larger-than-life figures, conquerors, kings, and revolutionaries. But sometimes the people who truly shape an era are the ones who were never supposed to rule at all. They operate from the shadows, their hands on the levers of power while remaining almost invisible. In the grand, treacherous theater of Ming Dynasty China, one such man orchestrated a spectacular rise and an even more horrifying fall. His name was Liu Jin. He was a eunuch, a servant who, through sheer cunning and ambition, became an emperor in all but name. He commanded armies, controlled the imperial treasury, and held the life of every official in his hands. But his story is a chilling lesson in what happens when absolute power, born from greed, leads to a reckoning of unimaginable brutality, a reckoning that would be carved into his body piece by excruciating piece. Imagine a death so agonizing it takes 3 days to complete, a punishment of 1,000 cuts, where each slice is a public spectacle. This was the real-life fate of Liu Jin. So how did a man from the lowest rungs of society become the secret ruler of an empire, only to be betrayed by his closest allies and literally torn apart? To understand the end, an end so brutal it was spoken of in whispers for centuries, we have to go back to the beginning, to a world where a young boy gave up everything to grasp at a sliver of power. In the 15th century, the Ming Dynasty was a colossal empire governed by a dizzying web of tradition and ritual. At its heart was the Forbidden City, a labyrinth of palaces where the emperor, the Son of Heaven, resided. To serve within these walls was a privilege, but for men, one path came at a terrible price: becoming a eunuch. Eunuchs were the human machinery of the palace. They were servants, guardians, and administrators, men who had been castrated to ensure they could never father children and start their own dynasties. To the powerful scholar official class, they were a necessary evil, seen as mutilated, incomplete men who could never hold legitimate power. But their unique position gave them something priceless: unparalleled access to the imperial family. They were the emperor's constant companions, his eyes and ears from childhood. This proximity was its own kind of power, a secret currency in the cutthroat world of the court. Into this world, around 1451, a boy named Tan Jin was born. His family was humble, a world away from the gilded corridors of Beijing. We don't know much about his early life, but we know the decision that defined it. At a young age, he was castrated and entered palace service. There, he was adopted by an older eunuch and given a new name, Liu Jin. By shedding his family name and his ability to have a family of his own, he was making a statement. His only loyalty, his only future, was within the walls of the Forbidden City. But Liu Jin wasn't content to be just another servant. He was smart, well-spoken, and had a cunning that made him stand out. He watched, he learned, and he understood the intricate dance of favor and influence. He saw how the rigid Confucian officials despised the eunuchs, but he also saw how emperors, often lonely and crushed by their duties, relied on the eunuchs who had been with them since they were boys. His big break came when he was assigned to serve the young crown prince, Zhu Hozhao. While other attendants were quiet and timid, Liu Jin was different. He got the prince. He saw a boy bored to tears with tedious lessons on governing, a boy who craved excitement and fun. So Liu Jin and a few other eunuchs made it their mission to give the prince everything he wanted: wrestlers, musicians, beautiful women, and exotic animals for his private zoo. They became his playmates, his confidants, his enablers. In doing so, they built a bond of trust that the stern, lecturing officials could never hope to match. This clique of eunuchs became known as the 8 Tigers, and they surrounded the future emperor like a protective and manipulative guard. And Liu Jin, with his sharp mind and knack for anticipating the prince's every whim, was quickly becoming the leader of the pack. He was laying the groundwork for a takeover, not with an army, but with whispers, indulgence, and the carefully cultivated loyalty of a boy who held an empire in his hands. In 1505, the old emperor died, and his fun-loving son, Zhu Hozhao, became the Zhengde emperor. At just 14, he was now the master of China, but he had zero interest in the dusty scrolls and endless paperwork of running an empire. He wanted to be anything but an emperor. He loved military parades, martial arts, and learning foreign languages. He even gave himself over-the-top titles and would often disappear from the Forbidden City for months to live in a lavish party compound he built for himself. With the emperor checked out, a massive power vacuum opened up, and the 8 tigers, led by Liu Jin, rushed to fill it. The Zhengde emperor, who distrusted the stiff and judgmental officials, put his absolute faith in the eunuchs he saw as his true friends. The officials were horrified. Soon after the new emperor's ascension, the Minister of Revenue, Han Wen, sent a formal request to the throne, begging the emperor to have the 8 tigers executed for corrupting him. It was a bold move and a stupid one. When Liu Jin got word of the plot, he and the other tigers ran to the emperor. In a masterful performance, they threw themselves on the floor, weeping, claiming the officials weren't trying to protect the emperor, but to control him by getting rid of his only friends. The young emperor, enraged at what he saw as a conspiracy to make him a puppet, sided with his eunuchs. Han Wen and dozens of other officials were arrested, fired, or exiled. This was the moment Liu Jin seized control. The emperor promoted the 8 tigers to key positions, but the greatest power went to Liu Jin. He was made head of the Directorate of Ceremonial, the most influential eunuch office. This position gave him control of the red brush, meaning all official documents to and from the emperor had to pass through his hands. He could edit them, ignore them, or rewrite them completely. He became the sole gatekeeper of information. The emperor only saw what Liu Jin wanted him to see. The emperor himself practically invited it. On one occasion, when Liu Jin brought him a stack of documents to sign, the emperor irritably waved him away, saying, "Why do you think I have you, if not to spare me these tedious tasks?" From that day on, Liu Jin rarely bothered him with matters of state. He was no longer just a servant, he was the puppet master, and the Son of Heaven was his magnificent, oblivious puppet. With the emperor's blessing, Liu Jin's power became monstrous. He was, for all intents and purposes, the shadow emperor of China. Officials who once would have despised him now had to kneel in his presence, calling him Qian Sui, or Lord of 1,000 Years, a title second only to the emperor's Lord of 10,000 Years. He set up his own secret police force, the Palace Depot, which answered only to him and was used to spy on and crush his enemies. A reign of terror began. Anyone who dared to oppose him was branded a conspirator, arrested, tortured, and often executed. His ambition was matched only by his greed. Liu Jin understood that power rested on wealth. He launched a series of so-called reforms to increase state revenues, sending his agents to impose heavy new taxes on everything from salt to silver mines. While some of the money did reach the treasury, a massive portion of it was funneled directly into Liu Jin's pockets. He openly sold government offices to the highest bidder, filling the ranks with his loyal cronies. His wealth became legendary. Bribes weren't just accepted, they were required. Officials seeking an audience had to present him with lavish gifts. His mansions were treasure houses, overflowing with gold, silver, pearls, and priceless art. The scale of his corruption was breathtaking. After his downfall, it was discovered he had collected an estimated 330,000 kilograms of gold and over 8 million kilograms of silver. This wasn't just corruption, it was the systematic looting of an empire, a fortune that dwarfed the emperor's own treasury. Liu Jin ruled with a mix of administrative skill and pure brutality. He terrified the scholar official class, who saw him as the ultimate perversion of the natural order, a mutilated servant who dared to command the educated elite. But they were powerless. He controlled the capital's military, the secret police, and most importantly, the emperor's ear. He had become the most powerful and most hated man in China, all built on a foundation of fear, greed, and the willful ignorance of the one man who could stop him. But structures like that are never stable. Every official he purged and every ounce of silver he stole created another enemy, silently waiting for the Shadow Emperor to finally make a mistake. For 5 years, Liu Jin's power seemed absolute, but his arrogance was a blindfold. He had alienated not only the officials he despised, but also the very men who had risen with him, the other tigers. They too were powerful, but they lived in constant fear of Liu Jin's cruelty, realizing his greed knew no bounds and his loyalty was only to himself. The end began in the spring of 1510. A minor prince, Zhu Jifan, launched a rebellion, framing it as a righteous crusade to rid the court of the corrupt Liu Jin. The revolt itself was quickly crushed, but it gave Liu Jin's enemies the perfect opening. The emperor sent an official, Yang Yiqing, and one of the other 8 tigers, a general named Zhang Yong, to deal with the aftermath. Yang Yiqing was a clever strategist who had been purged by Liu Jin and held a serious grudge. During the long journey, he went to work on Zhang Yong, stoking his fear and resentment. He convinced the eunuch general that Liu Jin saw him as a rival and would surely get rid of him once he returned. Yang painted a vivid picture. Zhang Yong was in mortal danger, and his only hope was to strike first. By the time they returned to Beijing, Zhang Yong was convinced. He joined forces with the other tigers, who all felt threatened by Liu Jin's dominance. The conspiracy was set. The betrayal wouldn't come from the officials Liu Jin persecuted, but from his own inner circle. On the night of September 13th, 1510, the emperor held a banquet to celebrate the victory. Liu Jin, triumphant, was the guest of honor. After he left, Zhang Yong and the other eunuchs made their move. They fell to their knees before the emperor and accused Liu Jin of the ultimate crime, treason. They claimed he was plotting to assassinate the emperor and put his own grandnephew on the throne. The Zhengde emperor was stunned. He refused to believe it. Liu Jin was his confidant, his friend. But Zhang Yong and the others were relentless, tearfully begging him to at least search Liu Jin's homes for evidence. Their performance was convincing. Shaken, the emperor finally agreed and sent the imperial guard to raid Liu Jin's mansions that night. What they found shattered the emperor's world. It wasn't just the mountains of gold and silver. It wasn't just the false imperial seals. It was the weapons. Hidden in his homes was a private arsenal, suits of armor, shields, and most damning of all, a cache of daggers and fans with concealed blades. When the emperor saw the evidence, his trust turned to pure fury. The hidden weapons seemed to be undeniable proof of a planned assassination. The man he had trusted like a father had betrayed him. In an instant, the emperor's favor vanished, replaced by a cold, murderous rage. He ordered Liu Jin's immediate arrest and decreed that he would suffer the most horrific punishment the law allowed. Thrown into prison, Liu Jin's world collapsed. At his trial, he was defiant, but it was useless. His protector was now his chief accuser. His fate was sealed, death by Lingchi. Lingchi, often called death by 1,000 cuts or slow slicing, was a form of execution reserved for the worst crimes imaginable, like treason. It was more than just killing, it was a ritual of complete annihilation. The idea was to destroy the body on earth and condemn the soul for eternity. It was a public spectacle, a gruesome piece of political theater. The execution began on September 27, 1510. Liu Jin was tied to a wooden frame in a public square. The hatred for him was so intense that historical accounts claim angry onlookers bought pieces of his flesh from the executioners to eat with wine, the ultimate act of vengeance. The punishment was scheduled to last for 3 days. The executioners were skilled, their task not to kill, but to prolong the agony. They began making methodical incisions on his chest, arms, and legs. The plan was for 3,357 cuts in total. One incredible detail from the record states that after the first day of torture, he was taken back to his cell and calmly ate a bowl of porridge. But he finally died on the second day after somewhere between 300 and 400 cuts. Even then, the punishment continued. The executioners carried out the full sentence on his lifeless corpse, ensuring his body was completely mutilated, just as the law demanded. The brutal spectacle served its purpose. It was a visceral, unforgettable warning to any who would dare usurp the emperor's power. The Shadow Emperor had been erased from the world in the most agonizing way conceivable. The fall of Liu Jin sent shockwaves through the Ming court. His corrupt network was dismantled, and his massive fortune was confiscated, temporarily refilling the state treasury. The scholar officials celebrated the end of his tyranny. But the celebration didn't last long. While Liu Jin was gone, the real problems remained. The Zhengde emperor, though shaken, didn't change his ways. He continued to neglect his duties and rely on other eunuchs, ensuring the cycle of corruption would continue, a cycle that would plague the Ming Dynasty and contribute to its eventual decline. The tools of terror Liu Jin perfected, like the secret police, remained in place, ready for the next tyrant. Liu Jin's story became the ultimate cautionary tale in Chinese history. He is remembered as the archetypal evil eunuch, a greedy, cruel villain whose ambition knew no limits and whose fall was a moment of celebrated, bloody justice. His name became a warning about the dangers of unchecked power. The tale of Liu Jin is more than just a dramatic story. It's a reminder that power vacuums are always filled, and those who rule from the shadows can be more powerful than those on the throne. He mastered the art of manipulation, turning a boy emperor into his shield. But in the end, the treacherous system he exploited was the very system that consumed him. The betrayal that brought him down was a mirror of his own methods, and his horrifying death stands as one of history's most brutal warnings about the true price of absolute power. So what do you think? Was Liu Jin a brilliant administrator corrupted by power, or was he a ruthless monster from the very beginning? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Ancient Vault for more dives into the dark and dramatic corners of history. Thanks for watching.